Hey everybody, welcome to this section of the course. In this section, we'll be scripting for a Amazon purchase bot using Selenium. A quick agenda for this section. I'm going to go over my personal coding process of like how I code. And then we're going to go ahead and see how to find the code, the HTML code behind a web page in Google Chrome. And then lastly, we're going to write a script that's going to be a Amazon purchase bot that's going to purchase a mouse pad, and it's going to write in a new address and send it to, or write a gift message and whatnot. So that's what we'll be doing in this section. So my coding process. So I like to think of my coding process as like a 3-step process. The first process, which is what we'll be doing in this section, is we'll be scripting. So this is essentially writing code that'll get the job done. I think of it as like a proof of concept. It's not necessarily the most efficient way or the most readable way to write code. I'm not like worried about that, about like, debugging, about like various like errors and whatnot, logging and whatnot. I'm just writing code to like basically prove something out. The next step is basically making the code more efficient, making it more readable, avoiding repeating the same code if possible, more uses of classes and functions. And I like to think of that as like my second step. And the third step is making the code reusable. So let's say that I have two processes that are very similar. I want to make it so that like I can use the same piece of code for both processes with very little manipulation of like, variables that I pass into the code and whatnot. So that's the third process. So in this section, we'll be scripting. So and then later on in this course, we'll go over, making the code more efficient and making reusable and whatnot. So with that, the next thing on the agenda is finding code behind a web page. So I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to move my screen over here. I'm going to go ahead and go to Google Chrome. So I'm going to go to Amazon.com. And then this is a product that we'll be purchasing with our Amazon bot. But I kind of want you guys to see something. So on this web page, you see a lot of different things, right? A lot of like different buttons, a lot of different prices, headings, labels, and whatnot. So the way Selenium, which is the package we'll be using to create this bot, the way it will be communicating with this code is basically figuring out what each of these elements are so that we can tell Selenium to like click on it or get the text from it or what have you. So let me give you an example, right? So like there's this button on here called add to cart. So if I right click on it and click inspect, it will basically pull up the HTML code behind this web page for the entire web page. Now I want to click right click and hit inspect again. It will take me to something right here. So like here you can see something like, okay, like this ID is called add to cart, or like the ID for this button is called add to cart button. And so essentially what I'm going to do is tell Selenium to like, hey, click this particular ID or whatnot. If you want to look at something else, let's look at the price of this. So I click on this and I hit inspect, and then you can see, okay, like the ID for this is like the price block, our price, or whatnot. So essentially, this is how this is how you view the code behind a web page, and this is what we'll be using to kind of like tell Selenium what to do. So with that, I'm going to move myself back and let's get started with writing a script to buy that particular product that we just looked at. So first thing I'm going to do is open up command prompt, and I am going to go and pull this over to this screen. I'm going to hit Jupyter Notebook. So go ahead and head over to where like the contents for this course are located, and then we're in the script for Amazon purchase bot using Selenium. So, which is this right here. So I'm going to open this up. I'm also going to write this code with you guys because I feel like that's the best way to learn code. And it gives me an opportunity to explain what we're doing as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy out and pull this out right here as well. So you're going to move this one off this side and that here. Okay, cool. I'm going to name this Amazon purchase bot script live. I'm going to go ahead and rename this. Okay, cool. So the first step is when I'm writing the script is I'm going to import the WebDriver from Selenium. So I'm going to say from Selenium import WebDriver, right? And then I'm going to define a few variables. So the first one is the link, URL to that product that we just saw. Now I can call this URL. I can call this link. I can call it anything I want. But I'm going to define this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define my Chrome driver path and my Chrome profile path. So this is the profile that has your Amazon credentials stored that we looked in the last that we did in the last section. And the Chrome driver path is basically where your executable path is, where which is what Selenium will use to kind of open up a web browser and whatnot. So a couple of things to remember: backslashes. I have it as I have 2 backslashes for every 1 backslash because like Python thinks of this as escape character. And for the Chrome profile path, I have this user data directory equals to. So make sure you have that as well. So now what I'm going to do is within WebDriver, there is something called Chrome options, where I can basically like pass in like my Chrome profile and whatnot. So I'm going to write the code out for that. Chrome options. So this is basically Chrome options is a class within WebDriver, and I'm basically I'm saying that options is that class now. So I'm going to now what I can do is I can call like functions off of that class. So one of the functions is add argument. And if you want to see all the functions, you can just hit options.tab. So I'm going to see options.tab, add argument. And if I do little parentheses and I hit shift tab inside of it, it tells me, okay, like this is a function, and it tells me a little bit about the function. So this is adds an argument to the list. So we can see a little bit about it. It tells you like where it's located and whatnot as well. So add argument, and within this argument, I'm going to pass in the Chrome profile path that I defined earlier, which has my Amazon credentials stored, so that I don't have to like keep signing in. And then finally, I'm going to create a driver object, and this is going to come from webdriver.chrome. And here I'm going to pass in my Chrome driver path. And I'm also going to pass in the options, Chrome options, and I'm going to pass in the options object that I just created, which has my Chrome profile path. And if you want to see what this does, you can hit shift tab inside of it, and it'll tell you a little bit about what it does. Controls the Chrome driver and allows you to drive the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and hit shift enter to kind of run this. And what you'll see happen is like something like this will pop up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this to the side. I'm actually going to put this view on. I'm going to move this to my other screen. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Okay, cool. So now, the first step is to go to the website, right? So to do that, I can call, you can see like all the functions you have. So you have like, add cookies, back, close, etc., etc. For now, all we want to do is go to or go to a website so we can use the get function. And what this does is it loads a web page. And once again, I hit get, and then I hit the parentheses, and within the parentheses, I hit Shift Tab, and I can see what this function does. So this function loads a web page in the current browser session, and it's basically expecting an argument, which is the URL. I can call this argument or this parameter whatever I want, but it's just so happens that I called my link URL as well. So I'm going to type this in, and I'm going to hit Shift Enter. And what's going to happen is that web page is going to pop up, right? So now I'm essentially controlling this web page with with the code I'm writing here. So now the first step I want to do is I want to click on this add to cart button to make this purchase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to hit inspect. And I'm going to this window is going to pop up, and I'm going to go back to that button again, and I'm going to hit inspect. So now you can see that, okay, this button has an ID, right? And then that ID is called add to cart button. Now there's a lot of like HTML code behind it. It has a title, it has like, a value, blah, blah, blah. But within Selenium, within your driver, you have like functionality to find element by ID. You also have a lot of other functionality like find element by link text, and we'll be using some of this. But this section and course is supposed to be like a basic overview of like what Selenium can do. So we're gonna do find element by ID. And so the ID of that button is, as we saw when we hit inspect twice, it's add to cart button, right? So we hit add to cart button, and now we can once we have that that defined, we can also say click on it. So this will only work for things you can click on. It won't work for things you can't click on. So this add to cart button, you can click on it. So when I hit Shift Enter, what this will do is it basically like went to this screen right here, right? When I hit Shift Enter. So now what I want to do is I want to hit Proceed to Checkout. So I got to figure out what this button is. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Inspect again. And one more time to get to that particular location. And so let's see. So this is under this guy right here. And sometimes you kind of have to like play with it. But here I can see that this has an ID, and this has the attached site sheet checkout button. So the ID is like usually the easiest way to find elements, but sometimes they won't have IDs. So, and we'll get to that within this script that we're writing. But this button has a ID, and it's called attach site sheet checkout button. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do like very similar to what we did this in this previous step. And we're gonna go ahead and find element by ID, and we're just gonna change this element ID to attach site sheet checkout button. And we're gonna go ahead and hit click. So let's see what happens there. What it's gonna do is click that button. So now I've already done this in here, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on this edit address, right? Because we want to add a new address in. You can add any address you want, but to click on this edit address, what we're gonna do is, or actually instead of edit address, we're gonna add a new address, right? So we want to click on this button or this link right here. So we're going to click on this, and we're going to inspect it. And then we're going to click on this again and hit inspect again to get to that particular location. So right away, I see that this has a ID of add new address popover link, right? So what I'm gonna do is I can just, since it has an ID, I can just copy this guy right here and you know, just uh, change the element ID to add new address popover link. And I'm actually going to close this window so you guys can see what's happening here. So once I type in this piece of code and I hit Shift Enter, what you're going to see is this like pop-up window open up, and you can basically add your address here. So what we want to do now is, look at these individual things or these individual address elements and, pass in a value here. So for example, let's go ahead and click here and hit inspect, and go ahead and click here again and hit inspect again. So now what you'll see is that these elements have a ID, but they also have a name, right? And so one of the other ways to interact with that Selenium can interact with elements on a web page is by the name. So that's what we're going to do. So instead of find element by ID, we're going to use the find element by name functionality. And the name of this guy is address UI widgets, enter address full name. So the first thing we want to do, and I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And the first thing we want to do is, I'm going to copy this right here from the other window, right? And the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and clear whatever is in here, right? So this definitely had a value. So if I hit inspect inside of it, it had and I got to hit inspect twice. So it has a value, and you can see that the value is my name, right? So I don't want my name here because essentially what we're going to be doing is like gifting this to somebody. So I'm going to hit close. So what I want to do is I can hit the call a clear method from here, right? And so, oops, find element by name. And what this will do is it'll basically clear that full name. And now I can call in the send keys method. And I can actually send whatever name I want. So let's say that for this particular reason, I want to go with the name of, Joe Johnson. And it goes ahead and passes that to that variable right here. So essentially, we're going to be doing this for the address line 1, line 2, city, state, zip code, phone number, and whatever have you. So I'm going to quickly go over this. I'm just going to copy and paste right here because it's essentially the same thing. But if you look here, you can do the same process of inspecting it and inspecting it again and seeing what the name is of that particular element. So the name is address UI widgets, enter address line 1, and then the line 2 one would be line 2, so on and so forth. So for this part, I'm just going to go ahead and copy the code from the actual Amazon purchase bot script that is part of this course. So let's see what this does. So now we can type in this address, right? And then let's type in the second line of the address. By the way, this is a fake address. So I'm gonna hit this. Okay, cool. I get apartment 1. Now I want to pass in a city. I don't necessarily have to hit clear, but for this, just in case it's populated, like the name was populated, I've included that in there. I don't necessarily need to include that in there because there's nothing in there and I can see that. But just to keep it consistent, I'm going to have it in here. And if you think this code is like super repetitive, because essentially the only thing we're changing is this like address full name or line 1, line 2, city, it is repetitive And in a later section, we'll like put this in a for loop and make it less repetitive. But for now, it's just proof of concept. So I'm going to keep it as is. Okay. I'm going to pass in the state. I'm going to pass in the postal code. And I'm going to pass in a fake phone number. Cool. So now I want to go ahead and click on this add address button, right? So let's go ahead and inspect this add address button. Oops, where is it? I go on it again and I hit inspect again. So if you can see, this has an ID. It has an ID of, well, it has an ID of like that whole box, not just like, because if I hover over this, you can see that the highlighted part is this like whole area, not just a button. So what I want to do is, well, actually I can, I think this is the ID for that. But I'm going to show you guys a new way to kind of interact that Selenium can use to kind of interact with elements. And that's find element by XPath, right? So what XPath is essentially you can click on this and then you can say that, okay, I want to see copy, full XPath or XPath. It's essentially, it'll be something like this. And it'll tell you like, the ID button and whatnot. And essentially I can pass this in to my, I can call Selenium or this driver that we have created. It has a method called find element by XPath, and which is the XPath that we just copied, and you can pass that in here. But let's say that we want to make it to wherever the XPath includes this like add address text. So what we can do is do something like this. We can do something like, I'm going to copy from my previous code. We can say that, okay, we're expecting a, 2 span. So this is the first span, and then this is the second span. And that second span contains, add address. And this is the syntax for it. You can Stack Overflow this documentation or like actually go to Selenium and read the documentation of what it's expecting. But for the purpose of this course, I just want to show you guys that, you could do something like this to where like, hey, I see that there's a span here, and then within that, there's another span, and I want to go, and within that, it contains the add address, which is this right here. So that's what I'm looking for. And once, Selenium finds that, I want it to click on it. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I'm going to click on this. So what it's going to do is going to click on that add address button. So shift enter. Cool. So now we have something like this, right? So let's say that this is Amazon asking me to verify this address, and essentially what it has changed, it's changed it from road to street, and it's also added like the full zip code or whatnot. So let's say you have a different address, right, that didn't like need to require like verification. So this is something that might or might not pop up. So what we can do is we can use something like a try except block, right? Where I can say that, okay, try, clicking this button if it shows up. So in here, let's go ahead and hit inspect again. And hit inspect one more time. So again, it's similar to what we saw in the add address button. So I'm just going to copy this and find element by XPath again, and instead of add address, it's save address, which is this value right here. And it is case sensitive, so keep that in mind. So I'm gonna say that, hey, if this pop-up comes open, and if it is, then go ahead and hit save address. Otherwise, if this is not there, if I run this and this screen is not there, like it can't find this. So for example, I'm actually gonna try something else. So for example, like if there, let's say that there was no save address here, just like there is no add address here, right? So what would happen if I type in like something like this? It would give me an error, right? And the whole script would stop because it gave me an error. So what I can do is I can do something like, hey, try this piece of code because this won't pop up every single time. Some addresses may not need verification. So I'm going to say, try this piece of code. If there is an exception, then, accept exception as E, and then print that exception. So let's see what happens here. Exception, let's see, accept exception as E. It's giving me an error. Let's say that we want to have something like accept, just pass it so that we don't get an error. You can print the error too, but for some reason it's not printing. I don't want to get into that. So it'll do something like this. It'll be like, hey, or I can type in like a customized message, like, hey, print element not found, or something didn't work. So now, like, it tried this, it wasn't able to do this, and so it just moved on, right? It didn't break your code. So that's what like try and accepts are good for. So what I want to do is I want to do, instead of add address, it's save address. And I'm going to just say accept, just pass, and move on to the next line of code if we were running all of this all at once. Right, so it hit that save address button. So now the next thing left for me to do is hit this use this payment button. So well, before that, let's say that it made you, sometimes like Amazon will make you select this particular like button. So I'm just going to show you guys how to like select this button. If you hit inspect here and inspect one more time, this button has a name and it's PPP instruments row selection on. So I'm gonna go ahead, and that's the value for this button. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. And you can, like, if this wasn't selected, I believe the name would be like PPP instrument row selection, but it'll just, but right now it's on. So like, let's type in this, and it'll basically like select this button for you. So similar to like what we've been doing, like selecting elements by name. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this. So now all I really want to do is, click use this payment button. So I'm going to go ahead and, similar to the last ones, I'm going to find element by XPath. And if I look at the code behind this button, hit inspect twice, I can see that there's one span and then there's a second span. And within that second span, there is, this right here. And it has like use this payment button. Here, where is it? Inspect. So let me open, yeah. So it has this like use this payment button, right? And so what this is telling it to do is basically like go to that. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this out and go ahead and click this. Okay, cool. So now it wants me to verify my card. And for the purpose of this course, I'm gonna pause this video here, and I'm gonna type in my my card number here. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel this card, but I am paranoid, so I'm gonna go ahead and the next step is to like type in your address here and click verify card. But I'm not gonna include that in this video, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit pause. But you can use basically the same mechanism where you can hit inspect, your card number, and then verify card, and then hit the verify card button. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video. Okay, quick note that I want to share with you guys here, right? So if I go ahead and hit inspect on this guy and I hit inspect again, what I will see is that if I hit inspect again, where did it go? Hit inspect again. What I'll see is that the name is actually dynamic here in this case, right? So there's an ID too, but if it has like a number that doesn't make sense, it usually means like it's probably dynamic. So what I want to do here is that I have a name and I can see that, the name has like some value and then it ends in add credit card number. So, right. So what I can do is similar to like what we were doing here. If I can copy and then copy XPath, and if I do add and then shift. So it looks like the ID is, some number, but the name has this like, it ends in add credit card for this particular field. So what I can do is I can do find element by XPath, and it looks like this doesn't use span. So this is just a way of telling it that, hey, uh, anything that contains that has the name, right? It has that contains a name, and within that name is add credit card. I want to use that. I want to find it, and I want to send it some keys, just like we did for the address. And then what we have next is verify card. So I hit inspect and I hit inspect again. And this verify card has it has a value. It contains like verify card. So it's similar to like, the add address buttons and the save address buttons. So similar to that, you just simply send your credit card number keys and then hit click add verify card and click on that button. So keep in mind that like this process might be a little bit different for you, or like you might see something different on your screen. But I just want you guys to kind of like understand like how like I'm coming up with the code behind it. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and pause this share one more time, or pause this recording one more time, and type in my credit card number here, or like send the keys, and then click on this button. Okay, cool. So now that I have done that, what it's asking for is what you need to do is hit this use this payment button again. So once you have verified your card, so I'm going to go ahead and copy the same code from earlier and hit use this payment button. And now all that's left is to add a gift. What we want to do is add gift options and then add a quick little message and then hit place your order. So let's look at first step is to add gift options. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this and hit inspect. And then go back to this guy and right click inspect. And you can see that, okay, within this, I have span, and then I have like, within that span, I have that add gift options. So this is similar to what we have here. So what I want to do is driver find element by XPath, and I want to, instead of save address, it has a add gift options. And I want to click on that button, right? So let's see if we can do that through this. Cool. And this pop-up pops up. And so now there's two things. We want to clear this enjoy your gift with like a customized message. And then we want to, type in our message. Let's see what is this element called. So hit inspect twice, and it looks like it has an ID, and that ID is message area 0. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy, because this is similar to what we did earlier. I'm just gonna copy and paste. and I'm gonna hit find element by ID, which is this message area 0. And then I'm gonna clear this, and then I'm gonna send it like, hey, happy birthday, hope you're doing well. So go ahead and close that out so you guys can see. Cool. So it cleared the previous, enjoy your gift, typed in happy birthday, hope you're doing well. And now I want to go ahead and click on this button. So now if I go ahead and inspect this, and I inspect it one more time, it looks like, it's similar to like what we had with the other buttons, but for this one, I'm gonna kind of like change it up to see how we can find it by XPath, right? So it looks like this guy right here, what we can do is that there is a class somewhere over here, and that class is, called a button primary Chewbacca enable save gift options button. So instead of clicking on this guy, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell my driver to find element by XPath, and similar to what I did, let's see, what I did here. I know that I'm looking, wherever. So this star means that it's looking everywhere, not just like in a span or whatever block you have. So it's looking everywhere. It's looking for a class that's equal to, that has a value of this, which is this right here. And once it finds it, I want it to click on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this. Cool. So now we have, added a gift options, and then we hit go ahead and add that gift options and hit whatever we have. Now the only thing left to do is place your order. So if we go and look at this and we hit inspect one more time, this button has it looks like it has a ID right above it. All right, like if I go over this, it highlights that button, and you can see that the ID is bottom submit order button ID. So I can go ahead and find element by ID and then hit click again, just like I have it in my script. But I'm not going to do that because I don't want to buy this product. But if you guys do, you guys can go ahead and this is how you would like kind of click on it and make it work. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. But as bonus, let's say that I wanted to, look at the price of this product or my subtotal that I have in my cart and print that out. The way I can do that is I can go ahead, and Selenium allows you to do that, right? So similar to like all the buttons, I can click on this and hit inspect, and then I can go back to the order total or like this price right here and hit inspect. And I see that this has a ID right above it. I don't think you can, if I go over here, yeah. So if I hover over this like ID, it says that the ID of that particular element is subtotals marketplace SPP bottom. So what I can do is I can say that, hey, find element by ID, right? But I just want the text, right? And so I can do something like this and it'll print it out. Or I can do something like, hey, this is equal to X, and then I just want to print out X. So order total is $9. So the purpose of that is just to show that not only can you tell, from Selenium, not only can you tell your web browser what to do, but you can also get information. So like, let's say you want to make a bot of something like a price checker, right? Like, hey, every morning I'm going to run this piece of code. I'm going to check the price of a certain product. Did it increase or decrease? And you can do that by like, by using this like text method instead of like what we've been using, which is like a click, a clear, or a send keys method. So that's about it for this section. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys, so like just a brief overview of what we did. We looked over like my philosophy of coding. We looked at how to look at the HTML code behind a web page, and then how we can use that code to basically write a Selenium script that will use that code and make a particular script or a bot or whatever have you that you want to create. And in the end, we created a script that essentially serves as a bot to purchase this mousepad product that we have. So really hope you guys enjoyed it. Really hope you guys found it valuable. If you guys have any questions or run into a different workflow than what we saw here, feel free to leave questions in the comment section, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. And I'll see you guys at the next section. Thank you.